In this video, we're going to explore southwest Saskatchewan on the Ghost Town Trail. I'm mostly going to be sticking to Highway 13 and Highway 18. Most of these towns either don't exist anymore or are now ghost towns. We're going to begin in Consul, Saskatchewan. It has this really nice old grain elevator, but it's not really a ghost town. It still has some services. The old grocery store is the only building here that's abandoned. But it's a really nice place to get started, and you're really going to love the restored gas station just on the edge of town. Next up, we're going to go to Robsart. This is a classic ghost town. Most of the buildings in town are still owned by someone, so there's no trespassing here. But Main Street is just filled with abandoned buildings, including that old service station. And there's lots of former residences. I don't think anybody's lived here in over 30 years. This is actually an old hospital. My favorite is the Beaver Lumber Store. It's been about 30 years since the grain elevators left town, and I don't think any business has been open since then. And I'd like to know how long that car's been sitting in this old gas station. Next up is Vidora, Saskatchewan. There's only 3 buildings left in town, not much to see here, and they're behind a fence. But this used to be a pretty big town. Next, we're going to go through the Ravenscrag Valley. The old ghost town of Ravenscrag has pretty much been bought up and used as a farming operation. Not much to see here anymore, as most of the buildings have been repurposed or restored. But the valley itself is breathtaking. The drive alone is worth coming here just to see this valley. There are some abandoned places to see along the trip. And about once a week, the Great Western Rail train goes to and fro in the valley. I guess this spot is where Crazy Horse once had his camp set up. I made an entire video on 10 thrilling places in southwest Saskatchewan. Most of these places, a lot of people don't even know exist. Check it out on the link above. Now we're going to Eastend. This is definitely not a ghost town, but hopefully they're going to get this train service started up this summer. There are a couple cool buildings here to shoot, and it has a great coffee shop. Dollard, Saskatchewan is just outside of Shaunavon. It's a really cool ghost town. Starting in about 1980, the church closed down and a lot of services left. There's this old service station. Since the door is open, I took a peek inside. There's a couple old homes here. And I'd say there's about 12 residents. But my favorite is this old classic church. Next up is Shaunavon. This is definitely the most populated town on the route, and it's also where you can get all of your services. It's got a couple really cool grain elevators you can shoot. And if you get a chance, check out the Saskatchewan famous Harvest Eatery. After Shaunavon, there's this really cool abandoned bridge. I think they shut this down in 1989. Now we're going to Scotsguard. This is one of my favorite ghost towns. There is one family who lives here and they own the entire town. They've spent a lot of time restoring and caring for the buildings. They don't mind people stopping by and checking things out, but of course respect the fact that it is private property. That's an old curling rink. These used to be very popular in rural Saskatchewan. But here's the jackpot. This guy collects cars. Really old cars. There's got to be a few dozen of them here. Every time I come back, there seems to be more. And there's also this old church. He's done a great job restoring this building. There's only a handful of old houses here. And you can't even enter the front yard because they're so overgrown. And here's the old school. I think they used this as a community hall for a long time, but now it's just not being used at all. Now we're going to Admiral, Saskatchewan. There is a few residents that live here. But Main Street has a few cool buildings that you can check out. The building to my left actually used to be a Ford dealership, if I'm not mistaken. And this building used to be the gas station. You can see part of the pump right there to your left. I think it's being used for storage now. The trip up Main Street is really cool with these 3 churches. This one's been abandoned. I do believe the other 2 are used as residences. And someone bought the school to the left and they use it as a studio of some sort, and I'm not sure what the person's doing with the old hockey rink on the right. Next up is Cadillac, Saskatchewan. Again, it's not a real ghost town. It just has a couple cool buildings to shoot. But I really like this old Cadillac hotel. They used to have an art gallery upstairs. I'm not sure if they do anymore. But it's this classic old grain elevator with these trucks in front that you're really going to enjoy shooting. Pontex is a French town with 2 grain elevators. It's worth stopping in here. Now we're going to Aneroid, Saskatchewan. It still has 1 grain elevator. The old hockey rink is being used for storage, I think. But there are a couple really cool buildings in downtown that you can shoot as well. But what everybody comes here for is this old, beautiful church. It looks like someone's doing some work here. Hopefully they're going to restore it. And the school across the street is just breathtaking. I did read recently that someone had bought this building and they were going to do something with it. However, it looks like they gave up on that project. I could be wrong. Now I'm going to stop at Assiniboine and get some gas, and maybe some sandwiches. Maxstone, Saskatchewan is just south of Assiniboine. It's got this really cool looking church and an old schoolyard. There was a sign that said you can call somebody if you want to go inside the buildings. But I didn't do that today. Now we're going to Wood Mountain, Saskatchewan. There is in fact no mountain here. I'm not sure how they came up with the name. They do have this really unique looking church in town. I'm not sure if it's in use anymore, but I don't think it is. Most of the businesses in town are no longer in use, including this old grocery store and the hotel next to it. I'm pretty sure these were both open until about the 80s. The train service left town here in the 90s, and the last grain elevator was torn down about 10 years ago. This is an old Gulf gas station. And there's still the old school in town. It looks like this closed in about the year 2000. I'm not sure what they're doing with it anymore, but I think it's being used for storage. The one big mystery about this town is why there's 1 kilometer train track still in town. There's no train tracks on each side. Now we're going to Fir Mountain. This town is really cool. It doesn't look like anybody at all lives here anymore, but there's got to be at least a dozen houses here. It's in this quiet valley, so when you hear it's kind of eerie. There is a post office in town where people pick up and drop off mail. You got to make sure you have Fir Mountain on your list when you're cruising southwest Saskatchewan. And it's not that far away from the Valley of a Thousand Devils. It's hard to believe that this school closed down in 1987. Glentworth, Saskatchewan is not a ghost town, but what I really like about this town is this neat church at the end of Main Street. It's also got an abandoned gas station and a grain elevator that's still in use. McCord, Saskatchewan again is not a ghost town, but it's got this really cool museum here. Across from the grocery store, you can find this restored gas pump. And they saved their train station, turned it into a museum. It was closed while I was here, but I also wanted to check out the caboose. Don't forget to check out Val Marie, Saskatchewan. It's on the edge of Grasslands National Park. It's got all of your services, including some really nice cafes. You can also spend the night here. It's a bed and breakfast now. It's a gorgeous building. This is where I pick up my coffee. It's got a really cool art gallery in there as well. And don't forget to check out 70 Mile Butte. It's only about 10 kilometers away. Masefield, Saskatchewan is a really small ghost town. Most of it's been taken over by a farming operation, but there are still a couple cool buildings to check out here. I once got an email from a lady who lived in this house. She was the teacher in the area. Now the yard has been taken over by cows. And here's the old bank vault. I checked, there's no money in there. Orkney, Saskatchewan used to be really cool. This main street was just filled with buildings. It's mostly been gutted now, but there's still a grain elevator to go and check out. The old church is now on private property, but you can still shoot it from the road. Loomis, Saskatchewan. Another very small ghost town. Last time I was here, there's actually a couple residences, but not anymore. And finally there's Claydon. Only a couple things to see here, but you are now just a few kilometers away from Old Man on His Back. That's the one place in Saskatchewan where on a clear day you can see the mountains. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoy your visit to Southwest Saskatchewan.